Hey guys, so I'm just going to go over how to do this lab about sunscreen. So this says certain types of ultraviolet light emitted by the sun can be very damaging to our DNA. Some types of UV radiation are classified as ionizing radiation, meaning that they have enough energy to remove electrons from the atoms that make up your DNA. Sunscreens protect our DNA by blocking and absorbing these harmful ultraviolet rays. But which sunscreens offer the best protection? Your job is to design an experiment to test which sunscreens are most effective. Okay, since you're doing this on a video, you're going to have a little bit less creative leeway as far as designing the experiment. I'm going to kind of help you out and show you the experiment I designed. And so I'm going to walk you through a couple of these parts. First of all, I have a couple of sunscreens we can test. I've got this Smith's store brand SPF 30. This is also a Smith's store brand, but it's like a fancier, healthier sunscreen supposedly. And this is like a spray-on sunscreen. So they're all SPF 30, but they all have different ingredients. So we're going to just test those different types of sunscreen. So the independent variable, what we're changing, is going to be the type of sunscreen. Okay, now we're not going to apply this to our skin and go test it outside. That wouldn't be a very ethical or good idea. So instead, I have this paper called Nature Print paper that turns really, it's dark blue and it turns lighter blue when it's exposed to UV light. So we're going to use that paper to test which of these sunscreens work the best. So the dependent variable, we're going to be measuring basically how much these little pieces of paper change color. So we'll just say color change, and that would be caused by UV light. Control variables are things that we are keeping the same. So a couple of the things you want to control would include that we want to use the same amount of sunscreen on each square, the same brand of paper. You can think of other things we might want to control. Could be things like the same amount of plastic wrap, things like that. Okay, now the next thing you need to do is come up with a hypothesis. So we have our Kroger store brand. If you want to see the ingredients, there they are. Here's our fancier brand, has these ingredients. And the spray-on has these ingredients. So based on that, I want you to make a hypothesis about which one is going to do a better job of blocking the UV light. So you can fill that out. Now the materials, we're going to use the different brands of sunscreen, the plastic wrap, and we're going to be using the ultraviolet sensitive paper. So you can write those materials in that section. Now in every experiment we need to have a control group. So a control group is basically a group that doesn't get whatever treatment, in quotes, we're giving. So the treatment that we're giving in this experiment is either sunscreen or no sunscreen. So I've got these little blue pieces of paper and they're covered in plastic wrap, and what I'm going to do is just smear on some sunscreen over each piece of paper. But we also need one piece of paper that gets no sunscreen, and hopefully that makes sense to you, because we need to test what happens if there's no sunscreen. So I'm going to go ahead and so you can put that in your control group. It would be the group with no sunscreen. So I'm going to go ahead and do the procedure, and you can kind of write out what the procedure is as I'm doing it. So I've covered these blue pieces of paper with plastic wrap, and I'm going to just put a little bit of sunscreen. I should be trying to use the same amount on each. That's going to be a little bit tricky, but I'm going to do my best. I need to wipe off my fingers. So there's our first sunscreen. Here's our second sunscreen. guess this one should be a little more covered. This one is that type of sunscreen that like turns your skin really white. And then the spray, I'm just gonna spray on here. Okay. There we go. So that's sprayed on there a little bit. And then my last one, I'm not putting anything on. All right. So what I'm going to do is I have this UV wand that will expose these to UV light, and I'm going to do each one for maybe a minute. So we'll start with this one. Move this over so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, so I just did that. I didn't want you to have to watch that whole thing. But here are the results. So this is the control. You can see it got a lot lighter than the other pieces of paper. These other three, to me, all look pretty much the same. Maybe this one is slightly lighter. This is the Kroger SPF 30. But I think they all worked equally well. So for your data table, what I would do is do something like this. Here's your type of sunscreen, a control group. The Kroger Simple Truth and the Hawaiian Tropic is the spray. And then I would rate how dark they are on like a scale of 1 to 5. So 5 being like maximum darkness. So I would say the control's like a 1, it's like very light. And then all of the other ones stayed at their maximum darkness. Like we're talking about the darkness of the paper here, like how dark blue they stayed. All right, so that's our data. Now you need to go through and do these other sections. So in the analysis, talk about any trends or patterns. Don't make any conclusions. So you just say something about how all of the sunscreens seem to work equally well at blocking the UV rays. Then draw a conclusion. So restate your hypothesis and then explain whether it was right or not and support your conclusion with the data from here. And then, also you need to talk about possible errors. So like, for example, some of the sunscreen was like thicker than, like some of the groups might have been thicker than other groups, or I might not have held the UV wand at the same distance the whole time. There's lots of like possible errors. And then what other experiments could be done to like learn more about this. For example, I only exposed these for like 3 minutes. I ended up doing 3 minutes. So if we exposed them all for like 30 minutes, then maybe we'd see a difference between the brands. So like that's something you could talk about. So hopefully that was kind of a cool, interesting experiment, and hope you have a good day.